Hello, today I wanted to share an activity that I have really enjoyed this month. I actually got the idea from the channel's name is Sylvain's Deadly Sins, and I'm going to include a link to his main video on this project in the description box. But basically what Sylvain did was each day he would read a chapter of The Wizard of Oz and then create some sort of tarot related activity, taking into account the plot or what happened in that chapter. So I was immediately interested when I saw what he had done, what he had suggested. I love reading, I love tarot. Combining the two sounded like a lot of fun. And so I pretty much wanted to do exactly what he had done. Now, I'm not personally attached to The Wizard of Oz. I didn't read it as a child. I think I saw the movie, I believe, but I wasn't particularly interested in reading it. So I did end up adjusting and going with the Golden Compass instead. So I did fully get the idea from him. I can't recall if I used any of the activities that he did directly. I know that I also tied it in with, you choosing your own goal at the beginning of it so that you could kind of go on your own journey in your real life as the character goes through theirs as well. I don't know if I would stick with that in the future. And I don't know whether he did either, because he did the first 3 books of the Wizard of Oz series. There's the main book that everyone knows about, but then the author did go on to write several more, and I think he did 3 total. I only watched the videos where he covers the first book, and so just to get an idea of how he did it, how he set it up, what sort of ideas I could use from that as well. And I haven't watched his videos on the 2nd or the 3rd book, so I'm not sure what direction he took with things. I think I was honestly kind of saving it because I've had so much fun with this. I wanted something to look forward to as well. So this is also a trilogy, The Golden Compass. I think it's called His Dark Materials is the little series. It's also a children's book. It's not that thick. It's a pretty quick read. It's like 23 chapters, I think, or something like that for this one. So, I figured when I'm ready to do the 2nd and 3rd book, I'm not sure if I'll do it as extensively as I did for this one, but I'll watch his videos as well to see kind of where he took things in the next books as well. He used one regular tarot deck, and I think it was designed as a community activity, something that everyone could follow along with. I think people were encouraged to follow along. He made it very straightforward and accessible for everyone. I'm recording this, what I did with the Golden Compass, simply as an additional example, right? I had a lot of fun with it. I wanted to share it. Mainly, I want to link you to Sylvain's version with the Wizard of Oz. I did what I wanted, how I wanted with various decks. And so I wouldn't say that, if you were going to do mine, you definitely could. I mean, hey, do what works for you, right? You might just have to modify it. Okay, so just take what I'm presenting here as an example of how I kind of engaged in this activity, right? So in this video, I'll give you a little intro about why I chose this book, and then I'm going to do, I think, probably like chapter headers, and for each section I'll have, I'll clearly split up the days or chapter, it's a chapter a day, and tell you what I did for each one. And you can, if you don't want to be spoiled at all, just make sure that you don't watch through them all the way. Or if you just want to take any ideas that you can maybe get from this video and do a book that you would like to read, or, change it however you want, then sure, of course, watch them through. Let's see. So I chose this book because, one, I read it when I was a kid, maybe middle school, something like that. And it really struck me. It really hit my imagination. I got this at a used bookstore, actually, before I'd even decided to do this just because I had remembered liking the book. So I had picked up all three at a used bookstore. You can see there's like some sticker glue right here. It's super beat up. I think this is from the 90s or something like that. It's an older book. And I hadn't reread it yet because there's just a bunch of other books I want to read, right? There's a ton of new stuff coming out that's really exciting too, and I'd already read this. So I just hadn't really gotten up the motivation to reread something. But when I saw this activity that Sylvain had done, I was inspired, and I really wanted to use this book for it. And the other reason is that I do associate this book with tarot. Now, I say that because I didn't think of tarot at all when I read it the first time, because when I was younger, I had no idea about tarot. I guess I knew it existed. Maybe I knew some of the major arcana images if I saw them in pop culture or something like that, but I really didn't start reading tarot until maybe 2 years ago. And when I first read tarot, this book is immediately what I thought of, because it really just sparked that childish wonder. I was like, oh my God, this is like the magical artifact that the main character has in the Golden Compass. So the Golden Compass is a magical tool that the main character has. It is literally a golden compass, but instead of having north, south, east, west on the front face, it has pictures around the edges, right? And I would say it's probably most directly correlated to Lenormand, however you say it. And because it's things like house, key, dolphin, crab, just singular items that go all the way around. It has a needle, and when you ask a question to the device, the needle will land on certain pictures in a certain order. And as long as you know what meaning that the compass is intending to convey, then you can read it and understand it. And of course, that's a special skill that only our main character has, or only a couple people have. And she knows which of the meanings that the device is referring to. And so when I used tarot for the first time, I thought immediately I recognized where Philip Pullman had probably gotten the idea for the Golden Compass from. I think it came directly from like card magic. So even though it's not card magic, I was still very invested, right? Another thing I did want to mention, I do realize that, so some of the characters in the book are Romani, some of the side characters, and they are positive characters. They have like parental, familial roles for the main character. They are leaders. They're role models. Unfortunately, the author does use the word gypsy when referring to them. I feel like that is not a favored term. I don't think it was in favor at the time of writing either, so it's something that should not have been done. And there is some descriptions that I found to be like othering or stereotypical, right? So it was mostly more at the beginning of the book, but he does continue to use gypsy throughout, annoyingly. Yeah, I just wanted to acknowledge that and let you know that it was a thing that happens in the book. And then, okay, here's the part. Here's the part where I was not as user-friendly as Sylvain's Deadly Sins Challenge. The main deck that I used was one I had just picked up, like the day before I saw his video. It's this one, and this is an indie deck. This is an investment deck. This would run you like $100, okay? If you want to use a regular tarot, feel free to use a regular tarot, okay? This is the ephemera one. I had just found it actually at a store. I didn't even order it. It was at just a witchy store I had stopped in at. I was really surprised to see it. And so of course I picked it up. You know, when do you see indie decks in stores? And the reason that I specifically chose it for this activity is because of the structure of this tarot in particular. The major arcana in that deck are a literary device. The creator replaced the major arcana with archetypes that reflected different stages of the hero's journey, which, of course, you always talk about in terms of media or books and the like. So look, new deck with a literary bent. Of course, I was going to use that one. So each time when I mention one of the major cards, I do say what its equivalent would be in a normal RWS tarot. So you definitely could use a regular tarot for this as well without issue at all. But just so you know, I did that. And I used a couple other oracle decks on the side. I think I used like Woodland Wardens, Animal Spirits Tarot, and the, I think maybe the Alchemy deck by Kim Krantz. I don't know. Whatever I felt like I used. So it was just those couple, and that's the tarot deck that I used. All right, let's get into what I did for each chapter. Okay. So for chapter 1, day 1, I chose the origin card, which is the Fool. That's the same way that Sylvain did it, at least to start with. I think I kind of diverged from here quite a bit because the plots were different, so I kind of had to. So I chose the origin card. I read over the description in the guidebook and kind of reflected on that. You can use the Fool card from any other RWS deck. And I chose a goal. It can just be for the amount of time you're reading the book for, or, if you're reading a trilogy or something else, a longer book, you can choose it for a longer period of time. Whatever works for you. So I just kind of lay that out, and I'm going to consider that the first part of my main spread. And also, so that you know, I pulled all the major cards from the deck that I was using, and I was switching them out at certain points. So I think I only went through 6 or 7 major arcana cards, and the rest of the time I was just using the minors. So you can arrange that however you like. But that's what I was doing for this activity. And so that's just kind of how I started things off. Before I even started reading, really. But when I was reading chapter 1 is called The Decanter of Tokay, where she's sneaking into a room at the Oxford College and where she's not supposed to be. And she has a animal companion. I think they pronounce it demon. And for children, they can change form, but for adults, they would stay in the same form. And so, of course, I thought it would be fun to draw from an animal oracle deck and see what my animal companion would be for the course of the book. I used the Woodland Wardens Oracle, so I shuffled, pulled a card, just thinking like, what would my animal companion be? And I got the antelope. I went ahead and named him S'mores based on the colors, so, feeling very attached to this one because he's been around on my desk for a while. Yep, so I read the guidebook entries for this and for the origin card or the Fool card if you're using a different deck. Thought about, what I wanted to accomplish and what my goals were for, the near future while I was reading this book, and just did some journaling based on that. I think this one mentioned that it was about calming energy and seeking out community, and that worked very well for me and my goals. So I was happy to pull that one. Okay, so for chapter 2 is the idea of North, and in that chapter, it's unclear whether Lyra's uncle or the college master have her best interests in mind. She's, they're both acting kind of shady. She can't really tell. Sometimes they seem to help, other times to hurt. And so the question I wanted to pull a card from was, what is something that you aren't certain is helping or hurting you in your journey? And so for that, I just used the remainder of the deck that I had available, minus the majors, although if you want to include those for more, just to have a fuller remaining deck, that's totally fine. I just shuffled the rest. And for that one, I personally pulled the Six of Cups. So I went ahead and journaled on how that answered the question for me, or how that related to the question. And I included that in my main spread, which again, I'm gonna leave those out for now. And that's it for day 2. So see, they don't always take super long, just a little bit of a different way to do a daily draw, right? Okay, so chapter 3, Lyra's Jordan. In that chapter, it's a busy day, and her friend slash minion goes missing without Lyra noticing until that evening. What did you have as a child that maybe you don't have now? It's something that kind of disappeared gradually and you maybe didn't realize when it happened. Maybe something that if you got it back, it would help you with your goal, right? For that, I shuffled the remaining deck and pulled a card. And for that one, I got the Seven of Wands. And I wanted a little bit more clarification about it, so I ended up using an additional oracle for that part. So if that would be helpful to you as well, I just did it in the shape of a compass, right? Because, you know, looking for something you lost, that seemed reasonable to me. So in the north position, I pulled a card for what is it? Just an additional clue to what this is referring to. For east, I pulled why did I lose it? For south, I pulled how to find it. And then in the western position, I pulled how will it help you? And you could use a tarot or an oracle. Any deck would work. And that is all for chapter 3. Okay, chapter 4 is called the Alethiometer, and that is where Lyra gets a hold of the golden compass. Yay, it finally shows up. So for this one, I thought it would be fun to do a deck interview. You know, that's when she meets the golden compass. Your golden compass is the tarot deck that you're using. So I would either do a deck interview or review any record or journaling you have of a previous one if you've already done an interview with that deck, because obviously you wouldn't want to repeat it. I personally pretty much always use the deck interview that's in all of the Season of the Witch oracles. It's straightforward and I think covers all the bases. So for card 1, I did what personality do you have? Card 2 is what is your strength? And the like, you know, how will you work together? When to call on that deck? You can go ahead and pause if you want to. And then at the end of the chapter, here's a little quote when they're talking about it. But what does it do? It tells you the truth. As for how to read it, you'll have to learn by yourself. Of course, for tarot, luckily, there's a lot of resources on how to use it. And then here's a bit more of a description of it. So see, it really does look like a Lenormand, essentially. An anchor, an hourglass, a bull, a beehive. Those are the pictures that go around the edge of it. And at the end of the chapter, she tucks it under her pillow and falls asleep. So I think that's a common thing that readers often do to bond with their decks. So go ahead and tuck it under your pillow tonight. All right, that's it for day 4. For chapter 5, Lyra learns that Miss Coulter is a bad person. She had previously thought that she was good and friendly and had gone with her willingly. But she learns that she must undertake a rescue of her friends and her uncle. She leaves a wealthy, comfortable, warm home and strikes out on her own with the golden compass to go on the run, essentially, because she needs to escape this woman and go to where she needs to be. So for this part, I switched the origin card, which was the Fool, and I switched it with the Summon, which is, I think it's actually the 3rd one in the Major Arcana for this deck. I believe it lines up with the Justice card, apparently, in the regular Major Arcana. From the description of it, I think it kind of sounded a little bit more like Judgment, personally, but maybe I'm just mixing those two up. Anyways, it's about, hearing the call essentially for something that you need to do, leaving an area of comfort to do something that you end up finding more important. Yeah. Okay, and so for this day, I reread my goal and meditated on the deeper why of why you want it. Sometimes when we state our goals, they can be a little superficial and we don't really know about, keep asking why and why and why until we get the basis of really truly why we want that particular thing or what it's going to do for us, right? So I read through the description of this card in the guidebook for the deck and, thought more deeply about my goal a bit. And that was it for day 5. Okay, for chapter 6, Lyra gets help from an unexpected place at the last minute. Draw from the deck a card that represents what can be a lifeline for you and add that to the main spread. And what I mean by a lifeline is I just wanted something like when you're tired, when you're not motivated, what can you think of or reach out for to keep yourself motivated? The card that I ended up pulling, and you just use the rest of the deck again as usual. Of course, I removed the majors, but what I pulled was the Queen of Wands, and I think that was perfectly related to my goal, which it did have to do with presentation and self-confidence and things like that, and obviously the Queen of Wands is really relevant to that. So for me, I journaled about, if I'm struggling or starting to think it's not worth it or something like that, or I want to slack off on something I wanted to accomplish, I can think about an idealized future version of myself where I am more confident and outgoing like the Queen of Wands. So I was happy to have pulled that one. I thought that was very relevant to mine. So that's another thing I wanted to leave in the main spread. And then, I also kind of thought about how it might relate to these other cards as well. For day 7, I didn't actually add anything to this little main spread here. Lyra learns that things she believed to be true are not, specifically her parentage in the book. What stories do you have to stop telling yourself? Pick 3 cards from the deck and return them after journaling. So I just took the remainder of the deck, did a 3-card spread, and read them in kind of story form. As an example, I can show you what I had pulled. It was the Ace of Wands, the 8 of Swords, and the 3 of Cups. And that's how I took this to mean was that, a story that I've kind of replayed in my past quite a few times has been, I start off with a lot of passion and motivation. Then I kind of get stuck in my head and lose purpose and feel like I can't really move on as well. And because of that, I'm prevented from reaching the celebration of achieving my goals as I would expect. And so just because that story has been true in the past for me doesn't mean it has to be true this time. So again, for me, that tied in nicely because, here's a time where meditating on past failures would not necessarily be helpful for me, right? So just kind of an example of, where I went with that little activity on this day. Okay, for chapter 8, for now, Lyra is in a bit of a waiting period as others decide what to do, and they're going to help her get her kidnapped friend back, but they're waiting on to decide what to do because they're the adults and she kind of has to listen to them a little bit. But during that time, she stays active. She continues to practice reading the Golden Compass. Get a journaling oracle and pull a card while thinking about what you should focus on when in a waiting period or holding pattern where you feel like progress isn't coming as quickly as it should. And this is when you're going to add to your main spread. I used the Wild Unknown Archetypes deck. And of course, I picked one of the the ugliest cards in there, which is the comic Look at This. And I was like, y'all, I can't look at this for the next couple days. So I read through the guidebook and noticed that it mentioned one of the things to contemplate or to think further on would be the Laughing Buddha. So I was like, oh, heck yeah. And there we go. He's really helping me out already. The aesthetic is back. Okay, for chapter 9, Lyra and one of her companions realized they understood the symbols in hindsight. Pull a deck card while thinking about something you will only understand in a week's time and add it to your main spread. Or if you like, you could just journal about times in the past when a tarot message became clear after the fact. I know that I've had that happen several times. So for this one, I pulled the Ten of Cups, but just, whatever card you pull, you can just leave that out so that you can maybe refer back to it in a week. And I also liked, in chapter 9, they're kind of talking about using the golden compass. She read it every day, sometimes with others and sometimes on her own, and found that she could sink more and more readily into the calm state in which the simple meanings clarified themselves. There's a trick in it, like focusing your eyes. I just thought that was similar, right, to when we use the tarot, yeah? And at this time, I also switched the Major Arcana card, which was, I think Justice if you're using a regular deck. And I switched it for Dream, which I believe is the Magician in a regular RWS deck. This fit for me because Lyra was able to join the expedition heading north. She was finally seeing some movement on getting where she needed to go. So I read the guidebook's meaning for this. You could do that for your deck as well and reflect on any insights it sheds on the rest of your main card spread here. For 10, I went a little bit different direction for this one. Irek, he's a bear. Look, you can see there's like armored bears in the book. The bear wants his armor back. What can you put on every single day to use as a reminder of your goal and the tools in your main spread? Basically something to use as a talisman, honestly. You could do something like jewelry, a watch, perfume, a hairpin, just anything you'd be willing to put on every day for the remainder, just as a reminder of the work you've been doing with journaling and trying to make progress on your goal. I ended up choosing perfume, and I went with that. So I know that's not directly tarot related, but it was my own fun little activity, so I'm allowed to go off track a bit, right? For day 11, Lyra learns about parallel universes. What would two of your alternate selves be like? Pull a card to represent yourself, plus 2 more to show your counterparts in 2 other universes. I would either use maybe like a full tarot deck or like a separate one or an oracle. I ended up using the Kim Krans Alchemy deck. So for mine, I had pulled Chiron in the center, gold for an alternate universe to the left, and reddening as an alternate universe to the right. And so I just, went through the guidebook explanations for those and journaled about that. And just thought about the possibilities. And honestly, what I thought of, it just made me think about how curious I would be to speak to one of them, if things went different in their lives, like what, how did they make it happen, or what were their experiences like? I really thought, it really kind of sparked my imagination thinking about that. Lyra in this chapter also defies the leadership and does help free Irek so he can get his armor back. So I switched from the dream card to the next major arcana in this deck, and for that it was the fighter, which lines up with Empress apparently in a regular deck. So you can change the major arcana card if you would like. And again, I just kind of journaled on what differences, if any, and how that relates to the other cards in my main spread there. Okay, for chapter 12, Lyra learns that they are separating children from their demons, their animal companions. She meets a child who is holding onto a dead fish in its absence. So you're going to choose, you could use the same animal deck that you used for this one. So I used another, apparently I just really like using Kim Krantz decks. They always pop into mind, apparently. So anyways, I used her Animal Spirit Oracle. And so you're going to shuffle that deck and you're going to pull a card to represent what are your negative coping mechanisms when you fail to rely on the real demon in your spread, your real companion that's, supposed to be helping you and working with you. And for this one I pulled Crocodile, and I just considered it in a reversed position. So I would go ahead and leave this in your main spread and read through the guidebook definition for that animal energy. And this is basically the voice in your head that you don't want to listen to, right? All right, for chapter 13, Irek talks about when humans fail to see tricks or deceit, and Lyra learns that several things she took as fact, just because they were spoken by her father, may be false. So take your card from day 2. For me, it's going to be the Six of Cups, and using the remainder of the deck, and a reminder, I haven't been using the majors, but you can if you would like. Pull 3 cards to the left to show when you should interrogate this aspect of your life more closely, and 3 cards to the right to show indications that you can trust it. So remember, on day 2 we pulled a card where something sometimes helps and sometimes hurts you, and you're not always the best at spotting it. So we're just doing a little bit of deeper work with this card in particular to see if we can identify times, when you can and can't trust this impulse or this energy in your life. And those cards, those extra cards, the 3 on the left and the 3 on the right that you use, journal about those, and they can just be returned to your main deck. They don't have to stay out with your main spread here. All right, so for chapter 14, I didn't do too much. Lyra is kidnapped and taken to the facility. Time is limited, and she needs to come up with a plan. So all I did for this one was change the major card. We had the Fighter or the Empress if you're using a regular deck. And I changed this one to the Alchemist from this deck. And it's, it is about coming up with a plan, essentially. This is the High Priestess in a regular deck. So go ahead and change the major card, and then I just contemplated how that would relate to the rest of this main spread, right? And I also, from chapter 14, when she gets to this facility, the person doing her intake didn't recognize what a tool that she had. She didn't recognize what it was for. So she's kind of faking. She's like, oh yeah, that's just my toy. I want my toy back. And she's kind of acting younger than she is, and a little dumber than she is. And so the nurse is like, oh, sure, take it, dearie, but wouldn't you rather have a nice woolly bear or a pretty doll? And, that just kind of made me laugh, because I bet a lot of people do think that way about, tarot readers. Like, wouldn't you rather have something else? Wouldn't you rather use some other tool? But when it comes down to it, no. I want tarot. I like using tarot for the purposes that I use it for, and I wouldn't trade it for anything. So for chapter 15, I actually didn't I didn't pull any additional cards. Lyra explores the facility and finds things she can make use of, potential dangers to avoid. In aiming to achieve your goal, what are ways you can prep your environment to support success? So I would say explore the relevant spaces that your goal is going to need to take place in. So that could be your home, it could be your office, it could be, your car if you spend a lot of time commuting. It could be your neighborhood, and look at it with fresh eyes. Consider days 6 and 8. And the things from 6 and 8 would be, in my example here, the Queen of Wands, and then this, the comic one as well here. So if you're laying them out in the same way I do, that's where they're located. Okay. So on day 16, or chapter 16, Lyra is caught spying and almost suffers the worst fate that she's been fearing. She didn't want to be separated from her animal companion like that little boy that she encountered was. She is down, she's out for the count, she is crying and unable to take any action, and is kind of at the mercy of the bad guys in the story at that point. So for this one, I just thought, moments of panic, wipe everything from your mind. Put away your main spread except for the major card that we're on currently, your animal companion. And I would say leave this one as well, like the shadow form of your animal companion. And then I would keep your card from day 9 as well, the one where you are asking, what's something that will only become relevant in a week's time? Yeah, but everything else gets cleared off. These ones can be returned if they were from the tarot deck you're using. They can be returned to the deck. And the others can go back to your oracles. So now that you've done that, the reason I chose to do that was, you know, imagine you've made a misstep, derailed your goal. You've got sweaty palms. Maybe you're feeling shame. I don't know if you've experienced that, where like all you hear is your heartbeat. Your hearing kind of goes out because you're like, I don't know, you feel guilty and you feel bad about making a mistake. So maybe your cards from day 6 and day 8 weren't enough. Maybe neither was your day 10 talisman that you had set up and started wearing. Will you give up? So I think when you run into these, you should go back to basics to recover and get back on track. So pull a simple 3-card spread, past, present, and future, asking how you respond to adversity. You won't need to keep these out as a part of a spread or anything. They'll just go back to the deck after you finish journaling. And then on this day, I think it's been a week since we pulled the card from day 9. Does your mystery card from this day fit in with your reading? For chapter 17, Lyra is rescued at the last minute by a hot air balloon. She is in awe of the view from above the clouds. Now, I think when you're doing this and you're just having fun and it's just an activity you want to do, I say include whatever you have. If you have books of spreads or reference books or tarot activity books, like why not tie those in? So what I chose to do for this day was actually from a book of spreads that I have. There's one called the Bird's Eye View spread, and I just thought this was interesting because it's about looking down from the world from above. Yeah. Float up and look at your life from a bird's perspective. And the method of it was a little unique. I ended up having a lot of fun with it. I held the remainder of my main deck and shuffled the cards, and I started throwing them. I did it while standing, and I just threw them onto the ground because I liked that a little bit better. I kept my eyes open and kind of tried to empty out my mind and just thinking about the goal that I had and wanting to get a bird's eye view of my progress or how I was doing. And then I just threw cards until I had 8 facing up. And then, like it says, I just chose to assign them based on where they showed up left to right. What I thought was fun is they actually kind of landed in the shape of a hot air balloon. So it was facing away from me, but they were in like a circle with like one card up here, kind of like the basket under a hot air balloon. So I thought that was some fun synchronicity. Yeah. But anyways. And this is the name of the book. It's Sasha Graham's Tarot Spread book. Okay, now for chapter 18, I ended up liking this one a lot. Like, I had a lot more fun with this than I expected, and this might be how I do things in the future when I just want to incorporate tarot with a book and I don't necessarily want to plan out like activities or what have you. So for this one, I I'll just pull this up here. So the balloon crashes, Lyra is alone, and unknown bears appear. And then I just made the activity predict what happens in the next chapter. Lay out 4 to 7 cards and read them like a story, or maybe like elements of the next chapter, like a preview or something like that. So maybe they don't even have to connect. Maybe they're just various concepts that are going to show up, right? And it could also be fun. I didn't do it for this one, but I definitely will in future just to test it out. I think it could also be fun to do one line of cards for what you want to happen in the next chapter and one line for what really does, because I had so much fun with this. It might be because I don't usually do predictive readings at all. I do readings for like journaling purposes, for contemplative purposes. I really don't do any sort of predictions, right? And I don't even like the idea of doing fake readings for fake querents or whatever. I have zero interest in it. I feel like some resistance when I think about doing it. So I just don't think that's something I'm meant to be doing, at least not right now. But this I had no hesitation about. It was so much fun, and it really sparked my imagination. It got me thinking about, how I want the story to go or what I would like to see happen. And I think it's just a good way of slowing down and reflecting on what has already happened, which was kind of one of my goals for this. I'm a pretty quick reader, and sometimes if you read a book straight through without stopping and you never really stop to reflect, I don't think you absorb as much. So in general, this method of reading has been very enjoyable, and I had a lot of fun doing it, and I definitely will again, right? If you want, you can leave those cards out, and then you'll have that to reference, on the next day. For chapter 19, Lyra learns that the Bear King holds a fake stuffed animal in place of a demon, an animal companion that he really wants one. They don't have them like humans do, and so he not so secretly wants to be like the humans, I suppose, instead of true to himself. She is able to craft an elaborate lie by taking advantage of that knowledge. So I would think back to your shadow demon, I guess, your shadow animal companion, the one you're not supposed to listen to. Think back to that. It's from day 12 if you're looking back in your journal. And then I would journal about your relationship to the truth, either what you tell yourself or what you tell others when your real demon is in charge and helping you out, or when the fake one is at the forefront, when the shadowy one is at the forefront. So I found this to be very interesting. Hopefully it works out well for you. And that's all for this day. Okay, so for chapter 20, the Bear King faces off against Iorek, Lyra's bear friend, who, of course, turns out to be someone who has a claim to the throne, because, if you're going to know a side character, secretly they're royalty and important, right? So one bear, the king, is dressed in finery and wants to be human. He introduced many fripperies and kind of human nonsense that didn't really suit bears into their living quarters and their community. Iorek, the good guy, wins and restores true bear values and discards the human trappings. Are there parts of your maybe habits or lifestyle, or even your tarot practice that are just picked up from others and don't serve you in achieving your goals? I thought that was an interesting concept to maybe journal about after this. And I think you can switch the Major Arcana card from the Alchemist or the High Priestess to the next one, which for me would be the Keeper. I think in a regular deck, this corresponds to the Hierophant most closely. So, I think the Hierophant kind of clearly relates to issues of that, what is in your dogma that maybe doesn't need to be there, right? And I also thought just a moment from chapter 20 that made me laugh was she's talking about the alethiometer, the golden compass. She even thought it was rebuking her for asking the same question twice, which is definitely, I feel like, taboo with tarot. You're never supposed to keep you're not supposed to continue asking the cards the same question over and over and over to kind of get the answer you want. So I thought that was very funny. There are a lot of little moments where I think he must have looked up card magic or card reading as he was writing this series, I think. For chapter 21, Roger, her friend, is suspicious of Lord Asriel. Lyra dismisses him, and Roger says he is not sure if he wants to know what the Golden Compass says about it. He doesn't necessarily want to know information about the future or behind the scenes, right? And for this day, I thought it would just be interesting to journal about, do you do predictive readings? Pull for, whether or not you do, pull 4 cards in a square shape to see the pros or cons. So I just did it kind of like, you know, a line for predicting the future, and then I pulled a card for the pros of that and a card for the cons, and then, you know, below that for readings just for journaling, I pulled a card for the pro and a card for the con, and I just used the remainder of the deck for that and kind of journaled about it. So for chapter 22, Lyra follows Lord Asriel when he kidnaps Roger. When they come to a snow bridge, her ride, which was Irek the bear, has to stay behind because he's too heavy. He can't go with her. She has to go alone. After she crosses the bridge, it collapses, and she can't go back that way. Pull a card and place it sideways to represent the snow bridge. This is a habit that has helped you in some way, but also hinders further growth and reaching your goals. Identify how it served you. Then pull a card to the right. This will be what helps you to replace that habit with a better one. And pull a card to the left. That's an energy that will keep you in old patterns. So I'll show you what I mean. So I pulled the 2 of Wands first, and you know, handily, that even kind of looks like a bridge when it's sideways. And for the right side, what will help me use that habit less or get stuck in it less often, I got the Ace of Wands, and over here I got the 2 of Swords. Now, I feel like this used to trip me off when I'm thinking about a habit that I want to change or a bad habit. I've learned it's important to think about what it's doing for you. And so you might think, this is a bad habit. It's not doing anything for me. But if it weren't doing anything for you, you wouldn't do it, right? So if one of my bad habits is eating 12 cookies at 10 p.m. every night, you know, there must be some purpose that it's serving. And maybe I'm so stressed that I'm eating those 12 cookies. Just to numb my feelings or to deal with overwhelming stress or something like that. Or maybe I'm literally skipping meals, and so I'm hungry and it's too late to make a meal or something like that, so I'm just grabbing what's readily available, right? Even if it's a bad habit and you're like, this doesn't benefit me, it's doing something for you, otherwise you wouldn't do it, right? At least that's what I've learned. Like there's something that's driving you to continue doing it. So for me, that habit here was always staying in the planning phase and not continuing past it. So for this little card, you've got a little lizard, and you know, this branch is bare, but this has a little bit more promise. So he's kind of contemplating going over to this one, but hasn't made it there yet. I tend to just get stuck in that phase. Or even here, I think we've got maybe planets rotating another. So they're just stuck in that holding pattern and waiting and waiting and waiting and not taking the next step and just kind of endlessly planning and never moving on, right? So what would keep me in doing that is the 2 of Swords, right? Always contemplating the 2 choices, always going inside and thinking, ruminating. What would get me out of it? I light a fire under your ass, get more of that wand energy, and just rely more on passion, motivation, frankly, caffeine probably, and just do something, anything to kind of get things moving, right? So I don't know. Hopefully that example is useful for what I meant for that little activity there. So chapter 23 is the final chapter. If you made it through here, hopefully you've at least gotten some ideas from what I've done, or if you've been playing along, congratulations. Lyra is unable to save Roger, and the sky bridge to another world is opened when Lord Asriel sacrifices him. She chooses to take it. So for this one, I am going to finally switch the Keeper. For the next one, which is very suitable from this deck, it's called the Voyager, and I think that aligns with the Chariot in a usual deck. So I'm just going to replace that here. And so I kind of ended up contemplating what the guidebook had to say about that new card, and I just wanted to contemplate like where I am now versus where I started on day one with the goal, whether I made any progress, whether I had or even if I didn't, just these journaling activities were related to that very often. So I just asked myself whether I had a fuller idea of what I was undertaking, or what factors or subconscious urges or things would be affecting my attempts. You could do like a little spread if you wanted. Just because of how the book ended, because it wasn't on a super positive note, I was feeling really contemplative anyway, so that was enough for me. But if you did want to do a bit of a spread, I did kind of put one here. So you could do maybe just using the remaining cards in the deck, like how have I grown, what has helped me, what did I drop the ball on, or what area could use improvement, I guess. What should I focus on for the next 30 days? And then, just as a little bonus card, maybe below, I would draw one for what unexpected benefit awaits if I succeed, Just give it what little treat, right? So anyways, I really had a blast doing this. Books and tarot are both two things that I like very much. I really enjoyed this extended time with the book. I felt like I really contemplated it at a much deeper level, and I also enjoyed the daily tarot activities. I thought I got to know a new deck pretty well, and I had a lot of fun with it, and maybe even came up with some things that could be more general, like day 18, that I could just do all the time with other books just for fun. So anyways, I hope this was a useful example if you want to do this on your own with another book. And yeah, I don't know. There are 2 more books in this series. I'm contemplating doing the same thing for the next 2. Just because I did really enjoy this one, and it did kind of stretch my imagination to just envision different little activities for it. But I'm not sure. I might just do that one where you predict what happens in the next chapter. I just really enjoyed that and had a fun time with it. And it was like, quick and easy. So, I'm not sure whether I'll make another video on the next 2. Or it might maybe this was just a singular example, I suppose. So, and of course, remember that if you want one that's easy to follow along, I'm going to link Sylvain's Deadly Sins Wizard of Oz version in the description box. Oh, and I did want to say, if you do anything with tarot in books, let me know. I'd love to hear, even if it's something simple, especially if it's something simple, just something you do regularly while you're reading. That would be great. I'd like to try it out too. Or if you know of anyone else who's done something similar, like I feel like people have to do this sort of thing, but I just lucked across Sylvain's video, but anytime I try and search like books and tarot, I don't have any luck finding, activities or people who are combining a novel with tarot, because with those search terms, I just end up finding books about tarot. That's it. So yeah, let me know if you know of anything. All right. Well, I hope you've enjoyed, and I hope you have a good day. Bye.